Hello everyone and welcome to our March Lunch and Learn session. I'm Sam Thorne, the Marketing and Communications Officer for Climate Change and Sustainability, and I'll be hosting today's session with the help of my colleague Claire, who's doing all the behind the scenes production. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us this lunchtime, especially with the weather today, to hear more about the sustainable travel incentives at Solihull Council. So today we have Annabelle and Simon from the Sustainable Travel team, and they'll be talking about the Council's new staff travel plan and the range of benefits on offer to help you travel more sustainably. During the session, you'll also have the opportunity to tell our sustainable travel colleagues what incentives you would like to see in the future to help you travel more sustainably. So for anyone who's not been to one of these before, as an attendee, you don't have access to your camera or mic, so you can sit back and relax. You can have your lunch. That's obviously in the title of Lunch and Learn. You do have access to the Q&A chat box, so please add any comments or questions as we go along, and we'll come back to them at the end of the presentation. So yeah, feel free just to drop them in whenever you feel like it, whenever anything pops into your mind. Just to let you know, the session will be recorded. So any comments or questions you make will be featured on the recording, but it is possible to post anonymously if you prefer to do so. So I'll now hand over to Annabelle and Simon, who will talk you through today's topic. Thank you.
Okay. Well, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us. As Sam said, my name's Annabelle Matheru and I'm a Sustainable Travel Officer. And I'll be presenting today with my colleague Simon Forth, who's one of our business support officers, and we both work within the Sustainable Travel team. Okay, so next slide please, Claire. So during this presentation, I'll be discussing what the travel plan is and why it's really important that we as a council develop one and keep it current and up to date, tracking and reviewing it at regular intervals. We'll also be discussing what the benefits are for Solihull and for you, what incentives we can offer you, and how you can help us to implement it, make it as effective as possible, and drive it forward. And finally, we'd love to hear your ideas because it's something that we all should be taking responsibility for. But first, I'm just going to give you a very quick run about the Sustainable Travel team, because most of the work that we do feeds into travel plans, whether it's the Solihull travel plan or other organisations. Okay, next slide, please. So in the Sustainable Travel team, we do a lot of work with schools and colleges, all educational establishments. We deliver a lot of cycling initiatives, including level 1, 2 and 3 bikeability in primary and secondary schools. For those of you of a certain age like me, bikeability is the modern day cycling proficiency. We do a variety of other cycling initiatives, such as Balance Ability and Learn to Ride for the very youngest children. We do doctor bike and maintenance sessions. We do something called Frame Academy, which is where we work with older students at secondary school who have become a bit disengaged with the academic curriculum, and it's a very hands-on session learning how to build bikes and do them up, etc. And we also do a lot of training sessions for families, etc. We support schools to do a lot of walking initiatives, such as walking buses. We help them to do their park and stride schemes, where parents can park who live too far away to travel all the way to school can park further away and then walk the remainder journey. We do walk to school weeks, which we do twice a year in May and October. And we also do something called WOW with an organisation called Living Streets. If you've not heard of Living Streets, they're a national organisation that promotes walking. So WOW is where we encourage children all year round to walk, cycle or scoot at least once a week to school. And we have 18 schools signed up to that at the moment, and they get lots and lots of lovely incentives. We do scooter training sessions in Key Stage 1 to teach young children the skill so that they can scoot to school. And we've also recently introduced a new initiative called Scoot Route, which is, rather than training children, we go in and just make scooting really, really good fun so that they'll want to travel that way. We raise awareness of the importance of clean air to children and parents by delivering assemblies and lessons. We run an anti-idling campaign. We've introduced school streets car exclusion, which prevents movement of traffic outside schools at 9 schools. And we're currently piloting a new active travel ambassador scheme in 6 of our secondary schools, where the pupils work together and come up with an initiative. And in a few weeks' time, they'll be coming to the council buildings and bidding for some funding for whatever they've decided to do. We also have an independent travel training team who work with children and young people with special education needs to train them to be independent and sustainable travellers. These are usually young people who've relied on a school transport up till now. Okay, next slide, please, Claire. We have a business team that has been working on a number of projects since 2019. And due to the nature of funding, the work has been focused on outcomes in specific locations. However, the team are engaged or engaging with 19 of the largest trip generators in the borough, with a reach of well over 50,000 commuters. The team have also supported businesses to survey their colleagues and produce bespoke sustainable travel plans to encourage a shift to more sustainable travel. Support for travellers will include things like cycle training, cycle maintenance, public transport taster tickets, travel planning guidance, and more recently, we've been doing e-bike tryouts at pop-out events, and that's proving extremely popular. E-bikes seem to be something that people really want to try and take up if they can. And then in 2021, members of the Sustainable Travel team began working on new residential developments in Dickens Heath and Cheswick Green, producing travel packs with offers and guidance for residents to travel sustainably from their new homes. So that about sums up most of the work we do in the Sustainable Travel team. If we have the next slide, please, Claire. And this is what the Solihull Travel Plan will be about. So the Solihull Travel Plan will be a long-term strategy to encourage employees to consider whether there's an alternative to travelling to work other than using a car. We'd hope to identify the issues and barriers to travelling sustainably, and a working party, which is made up of members from the council, from all over the council, will be meeting regularly to discuss ways of overcoming the barriers, agree on actions, and to set targets. The travel plan will include an audit of facilities already on site and will identify improvements that can be made to encourage sustainable travel. It will also include a range of offers and measures, which Simon will be discussing later in the presentation, which will encourage people to walk, cycle, share car journeys or use public transport in order to reduce the number of single occupancy car trips. Regular travel surveys will be done, and that will provide us with valuable information on employees' travel habits and will enable us to monitor whether the interventions are having an impact, and will help us decide what we can do in future to help us change travel behaviours. So not only will the travel plan focus on the journey to work, but it can also be an effective way to address other issues such as road safety, improving air quality and contributing to the council's net zero targets. It will help make the areas around the council more pleasant and less car focused. It will make the site more accessible for visitors, and it can also include the efficient management of the council's fleet vehicles. Okay, next slide, please, Claire. So why do we need a travel plan? Well, it's recommended and good practice that any site or organisation that generates traffic should have a travel plan in place, and any site seeking planning permission will need one to meet planning conditions. Solihull's Sustainable Travel team work extensively already with many schools, businesses and new developments to advise and support them to develop and monitor their own travel plans. And currently we're working with 21 schools who are in the process of creating their own travel plans, with 11 already having achieved a high standard to achieve accreditation for ModeShift, which is the National Sustainable Travel Organisation. We are currently engaged with many businesses in the borough, helping them to develop their own travel plans, and this includes Solihull Hospital, which, as you can imagine, is a huge trip generator. And earlier this year, the Cabinet approved a proposal to amend the planning process. This change means that developers of commercial, residential and educational sites are now not only required to produce a sustainable travel plan for the development, but it must also deliver on its actions. Therefore, it's very important that we practice what we preach. As a large employer with Solihull, it is important to be seen that we are committed to reducing our own number of car journeys, encouraging sustainable travel, improving air quality and road safety, and making the area around Solihull offices pleasant places for our residents and for people travelling here either to work or to visit. A good travel plan will mean that Solihull employees will be able to benefit from the measures that will result in a better work-life balance, reduced fuel and travelling costs, and we all know that regular exercise and fresh air are great for our mental well-being. So with that, I'll pass you over to my colleague Simon, and if we could have the next slide, please, Claire.
Good afternoon. My name's Simon Forth. As Annabelle said, I work in the business support team in sustainable travel. So this is the Stato part of the presentation. We undertook a travel survey with council staff. It was last year now, in conjunction with Transport for West Midlands, which was part of their studies on how people are travelling post-COVID once the lockdowns were removed. Hopefully you can see here, it's a little small, but the sort of headline from the survey is that we have about 71% of people travelling alone by private car when they commute to the council. So these are the single occupancy car journeys that we're talking about. The remaining 29% break down to various other modes. So we've got about 12% of people using public transport. 7% are car sharing in one form or another, whether they're giving someone a lift or hitching a ride with a driver. Roughly 4% each are cycling and walking. And the other little green wedge is people who are motorcycling, catching taxis, or maybe doing something different. We do have a recent census in 2021. Which we would normally compare these numbers to see how we're doing with other areas of the country. Unfortunately, because that census was undertaken during COVID, the travel outcomes of it are not really very reliable, as people were asked what they were doing during the time they were told to stay at home as much as possible. Hold your horses. We're not onto this slide yet. But if we look back at the 2011 census data, albeit rather out of date these days, what that does show us is about 70% of people in Solihull at that time were travelling alone by private vehicle. So really what that's telling us is nothing much has changed in the last 12 years. Okay, can I have the next slide, please, Claire? I won't bore you with all the survey outcomes. I've just picked out a few of the positive ones here, where we've got 37% of people said they were confident to ride a bike off public roads. 38% can get their hands on a functioning bicycle, and over 40% live less than 5 miles from work. So what that's telling me is although we can't necessarily say those are all the same people, but what that is saying is there's an opportunity there and a propensity for change, for people to change the way they travel into work. And the big figure in the bottom left there, which is 61% of people want to be more active to improve their physical and mental health, really reinforces that we've got an opportunity there to enable people to do something different. It's not all good news, obviously. We had 39% of people who categorically stated they will not consider any other mode of transport. But of course, we have to understand that people live further distances away and they have other pressures on their time and lifestyle that mean they do need to use a car. Next slide, please, Claire. Now, we got a 17% response to the survey. It was about 290-ish people completed the survey, which doesn't look wonderful, to be fair, although we have had considerably worse ones with some of the businesses we've worked with over time. And while you could say that 17% is representative of the population of the council staff, some of the other demographic figures that came out of it suggest that actually it isn't. 64% of the people who answered the survey were women, and 59% of people were over the age of 45, and only 16% were under 35. So this suggests that we're actually missing quite large groups of people whose opinions are obviously important to us to understand their attitudes to travel. So we need to do better there, and I think that's one of the things we want to do in the future is consider options for engaging more people in surveys. Apparently not many people are as excited about a travel survey as me, which I don't understand, but there you go. Apparently this is the case. Next slide, please, Claire. So we are not the anti-car league. Most of us own cars, although we're trying to drive them less. And me turning up at something like this, or going out to JLR or John Lewis in town and saying to their staff, right, you lot get rid of your cars because you're all bad people and you're ruining the planet, is not going to be effective. Added to which, I don't really like being told to go and jump in a lake. So what we need to do is consider what would enable people to travel differently, what motivates people to do that. So you might be interested in reducing congestion and by extension improving the air quality in the area where you work or live. You might be bored to tears of sitting in a queue of 1,000 other cars doing the same thing down Beckenhill Lane or up the M42. In these times of financial pressure, you might be thinking about leaving the car at home a little bit more to save yourself some money. I know I certainly am. And as our 61% have told us, you may just want to get out and about on 2 feet or on 2 wheels and improve your physical or mental health. Next slide, please, Claire. So it would be fair to say the current council travel plan is woefully out of date. We have a lot of policies to deal with the wider community. We've got a walking and cycling infrastructure plan, the LC WIP. We have Solihull Connected, which looks at strategic direction for transport in the borough. And of course, we've got the overarching net zero strategy. What we lack is an up-to-date travel plan which deals with the needs and issues of staff at Solihull Council. That's not to say we don't have anything. We do have available via HR actually excellent discounts on public transport tickets. You can find these through the intranet and get up to 25% off bus travel if you're buying a bus season ticket, so that's a weekly, monthly or annual pass. Discounts on rail are not quite so keen, but there are discounts nevertheless. We're also part of the Cycle to Work scheme, which means you can purchase a bike or cycling equipment up to the value of £2,000, and you save the value of your national insurance and PAYE tax contributions on whatever you spend. So if you earn a great deal of money, you save more because of the rate of tax you pay. That scheme's operated by Halfords for us at the moment. But if you do decide to look into that, don't assume because it says Halfords all over it that you have to shop at Halfords. All of the local bike shops are participants in the Cycle to Work scheme, and once you've got your voucher, you can spend it at any cycle shop that's participating. We haven't had many cycling incentives over the last couple of years for staff here, but we are proposing to run some cycle training sessions and doctor bike sessions now that spring has sprung and hopefully the snow has gone for good. So they will be advertised on the intranet in the coming months. We'll have some sessions that you can book onto so that you know you've got a place at a defined time. And we can gear those sessions to either beginner cyclists or people looking to improve their road skills to enable them to make more journeys, such as commuting to work. We do have shower and changing facilities in the basement of the council house, which have become a little tatty of late. However, they are in the process of being refurbished. And I think the last mail we saw says that that is going to be completed around mid-April. So we should have some enhanced facilities for active travellers to get changed and get themselves clean when they get to work. Next slide, please, Claire. So what do we want from you? That's the crux of the whole thing. What do we want? What we're really interested in is getting a much better response to the survey so we can understand how people travel now and what their attitudes to different modes of travel are. And please leave us your feedback. Just drop it in the chat here. If you've got anything to say about the current facilities on site or across Solihull Borough as a whole. The way, no, beg your pardon, there's just a lorry going past the window. Wait for UPS to go away. Okay. The way we're funded means that we're not in a position to put in new facilities, to introduce new cycle paths. We just don't have the budget to do that. What we want to do is put together a well-founded document that is the travel plan that's based on the opinions of people who commute to Solihull Council, so that we can take that to the decision makers and say, look guys, if you're interested in being an exemplar operation in Solihull and really driving that path to net zero, here are the things that your staff want and can be effective, cost-effective measures to put in place to help people make that change from single occupancy car use into more sustainable modes of travel. Next slide, please, Claire. I'm making a rod for my back here, I understand, but we do have a shared email address. So if there's something that you want to say, ask, if you want to be a part of a working group when those are set up, drop us a line at sustainabletravelteam@solihull.gov.uk and let us know your thoughts. The more information we've got to put into this travel plan, the more effective that it can be. And that brings the presentation to a close. Thank you very, very much for listening. I think we're now going to take questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Simon and Annabelle. It was a really interesting presentation. Hopefully the audience thought the same as well. So notice we've had a fair amount of questions come through, so thank you very much for engaging and asking lots of questions. So I'm just going to go through them in order, really, in the order they came through, and open it up to Simon or Annabelle to answer them and just have a bit of a discussion. And feel free, if you've got further questions, you can still add those in, and we can get to them at the end. Okay, so the first one we've got is from Laura, and she's asked, are there any plans for e-scooters, for example, like the Voi scooter trial in Birmingham?
Not currently. The current e-scooter trials are drawing to a close at the moment. Some of them, I understand, are due to be extended into 2024, but I haven't heard any detail about that. I don't expect there to be any new trials anywhere else in the country, although in what was the Queen's speech that Prince Charles at the time delivered at the start of this Parliament, there was a commitment for Parliament to discuss the legalisation of privately owned e-scooters within this Parliament. How soon that will be forthcoming, I'm afraid I don't know, but we sort of wait to hear what that will look like.
Great, thank you, Simon. So the next question is more of a comment, really. I just thought if I read it out, and then yeah, if you just have any views on that, really, that'd be much appreciated. So it's some all right. As long as using the car is the most convenient option, things are unlikely to change. Are there any plans for area-wide traffic speed reductions, for example, 20 miles an hour, to improve the walking and cycling environment in terms of safety, noise, and air pollution? And some of the reductions in car parking of fees, for example, in town centres?
I think the car parking fees in the town centre have long been on the table. I'm not privy to any decision that's been made about that, but it's certainly been discussed for a number of years. Worth pointing out that we are not engineers or town planners, so those decisions are made elsewhere, although obviously we have a point of view on that. I'll just pass you over to Annabelle, who can talk about school streets and clean air, which is an initiative that's ongoing at the moment.
Yeah, so I mean, so we have got initiatives at school. So with school streets outside 9 of our schools at the moment, and we're working towards another 2. We actually put at the exclusion of it stops the movement of vehicles into these areas. So any vehicle travelling into, out of, or around that area could be subject to a fixed penalty fine. So we are looking at rolling those sort of programs on a bit, and the idea behind that is that actually, if you make something impossible to do, people cannot do it. And we found with school streets that actually we had more an effect on reducing children travelling to school by car that way than any other measure that we've ever put in place. So maybe going forward, rather than using the carrot method, maybe the stick is the one that is more effective, by just making everything a bit more tricky for the car driver and giving priority to pedestrian or cyclist. But as Simon says, we don't have much control over the town planning side of it, but we can certainly put recommendations through, and we're often asked for our opinion on those things.
Thanks, Annabelle. That's a very helpful input there from yourself. So we've got just got a factual question here, really, from Scott. Where would we find the cycle plan and proposed cycle lanes? Are you able to just shed light on that, either yourself or Simon?
I'll pass you to Simon.
Okay, thanks.
The LC whip should be available online via a straightforward Google search. A lot of that work is done through the Combined Authority. So the overarching documents cover the 7 boroughs within the CA. So there's a lot of crossover work that's done there. The funding tends to come to the Combined Authority. So that they do have an overarching LC whip as well. What was the second part of the question? Sorry, I forgot.
So where we find the cycle plan and proposed cycle lanes. So I guess it's kind of along the same lines as what you're saying. Is there anywhere where employees can go to kind of get an idea of what might be coming in the future? I know things are subject to change, but
there is the 2 segregated cycle lanes out to Knoll and down towards Dickens Heath were initially put in as temporary structures, or semi-temporary. We have had some more funding made available that's going to make those permanent. There is also some funding to do more scoping work for more segregated cycle lanes within Solihull. But at this time, that work has not been done. So as far as I'm aware, there aren't any concrete plans, although there are plans.
Yeah, no, I presume we will kind of communicate any significant developments and milestones.
Consultation on those will be forthcoming when they've been scoped out properly. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, and we'll make sure we advertise that internally as well as externally. So thank you for those answers. Another hopefully straightforward question, this one from Andrew. Are e-bikes included in the Cycle to Work scheme?
Yes, they are. The price cap for Solihull Council was lifted, it's probably nearly 2 years ago now, from £1,000 to £2,000 to bring e-bikes sort of within the scope of that. Obviously, there's a risk for employers who, under the terms of the scheme, own the bike until the employee has finished making payments for it. So there's a sort of risk attached for employers buying very expensive assets, which they may be left with if the employee leaves the business. So there's a payoff there between the maximum cap that the businesses can offer. But there's certainly no limit on the style of bike you can buy, so long as the taxman doesn't catch you using it for any less than 50% of the time commuting to work. Be careful, kids.
Yes, I'm sure that's an easy one to enforce.
Yeah.
Got a really interesting question actually from Laura, and it's something I've kind of wondered myself, and I know it's been in the news recently. So working habits have changed significantly post-COVID, and people aren't coming to the office typically 5 days a week. And it might be outside of your jurisdiction, but people aren't in the office. She's asked, as many people aren't in the office daily, are there discounted public transport options available for those only using the bus once or twice a week, for example, or the train? So yeah.
There are, not necessarily via the council. However, obviously the public transport operators were fairly quick to spot this as the new ways of working emerged. So there are, on National Rail, you can, for instance, buy a ticket which gives you 8 days travel in any given month. So instead of having to pay a full month's fare, you pay pro rata for any given 8 days, which saves you a great deal of money. But if you happen to be coming into the office 2 days a week, for argument's sake. Swift and National Express, because National Express are operating 90-odd% of the buses around here, have also got a selection of different travel cards available. They're called Carnet cards, which hold a number of day saver tickets which can be used ad hoc as you like. And they've also got a new product called Swift Go, which is more a sort of pay as you use travel card, but which offers you the same sort of discounts as you get by buying a season ticket. So prices are capped, I think, at 1, 3 and 5 days in a week, and anything you use above the 5 days is gratis. But if you only use it 1 day a week, you're just capped at 1 day's charge. So there are flexible options available now. Yeah,
that sounds good, and I think that's really relevant to so many people now. People, the way they work has changed so much, hasn't it, since 2019. Thank you for that. Another question from Andrew. You mentioned some training in your presentation. So Andrew's asked, would the training include route planning and other things? Sorry, choosing bikes and other stuff. So in addition to the kind of cycling training, does it include these elements as well?
I think it can do, Andy. I think we need to just suck it and see a bit and see what the sort of response from people is for training. But absolutely, I'm sure, as you know, being a cyclist, route planning is 50% of the work. Really, you can make your cycling life so much more easy by planning a route that's suitable for the way you cycle. So no, it's not available now, but yes, it certainly could be, and I think it's probably worthwhile looking at.
Thanks, Simon. Got another question from Laura, and it's just some feedback really on the new cycle routes on Blossomfield Road. So I'll just read it out. Laura said, I used to cycle to work and was hoping again, but find the new cycle route along Blossomfield Road really off-putting. I don't understand how you are supposed to join or leave from the side roads. Can you explain, for example, the orange post block access? So yeah, apologies if this is kind of outside of your area in terms of being in charge of these things, but if you are able to offer any insight, that would be appreciated.
I'm not sure I understand the difficulty, if I'm honest. I'm trying to envisage orange posts blocking the way, but I'm not sure what that is.
I know that there is some people in the council, isn't there, who have been involved in the design of the scheme, who perhaps Laura could speak to just to kind of go through some of these concerns. Got a couple of people in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Laura, if you want to drop us a line at the Sustainable Travel Team email address there, we can certainly put you in touch with people who can explain how that works a little bit better, or what the design principle is supposed to be that you should understand, but is perhaps not as clear as it could be.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, I know it's hard to answer everything, isn't it? Because there's so many people involved in so many different areas related to travel and highways and all sorts. So the next question we have is from Rebecca. She has said, typically most employers offer cycle to work schemes. As SMBC are proactively asking staff to cycle to work, will there be an additional incentive? I think this is in addition to the cycle to work schemes.
This is the sort of crux of what we're talking about. We, as I briefly alluded to in the presentation, at the moment we don't have funding to introduce further schemes for the council, but by engaging with staff and by surveying them to understand what incentives and what modes of travel are most attractive, it gives us the power then to go to the budget holders and say, here's where you need to spend your money to cause effective behaviour change in the way people travel to work. So no, there isn't anything in place at the moment, but that's really what we're aiming to do. Yeah,
to kind of unlock that additional barrier, isn't it? Would encourage that next however many people to take up more active travel. Thank you. So we have another comment here from Karen. She has said, it takes me 20 minutes to get into Solihull in my car, but if I use the bus, as there are no train links, which I know is quite common if you're travelling kind of east to west within Birmingham, you're not going directly in and out of the city centre, it will take 45 minutes to an hour on a good day. I feel safe in my car rather than on the bus. So it's just a comment, but I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, really. I understand where she's coming from.
Yeah, that's common, and there are places where public transport is really good, and there are places where public transport is woefully poor. And if you happen to live in one of those places, then it's not an attractive option for you to travel to work. And yes, unfortunately, that is just a fact of life with the places that some people live.
Yeah, I know Councillor Courts, the leader, has talked about that kind of interconnectivity within Solihull, about travelling around different areas of the borough, rather than focusing the investment on in and out into Birmingham city centre, which is a common thing with cities, isn't it? You get all the best infrastructure usually into the centre and out of the centre, but how do you improve the localised transport connections? For example, if you live in Shirley and you're coming into Solihull. So there's a few more comments really on the topic of buses. So if I just read those out in one go, and if there's anything extra you want to add, Simon or Annabelle, that would be great. But if not, no worries. So Rebecca has mentioned it would entail myself catching 3 buses to get to the office. 25% off bus travel isn't an incentive to get driven past in the rain, sleet and snow. Can touchdown centres be reopened as an alternative? I'm not 100% sure what touchdown centres are. Are you aware of those, Simon?
Not something I know about, so no.
Okay, so perhaps if Rebecca, if you don't mind, either emailing the team or posting in the question box just kind of what you mean by that, and we can explore that. Susan has written in to say, I am already a bus user, could do with an improved service to make it more viable. I have got used to long waits, but not likely to be an incentive to car users. So again, it's along a similar theme, really, on the kind of the duration it takes via buses, and also the previous comment was related to the discounts available. Just scanning for more bus comments before we move on, and Ulrich has kind of concurred really by saying, yes, even on the main bus route, services are so unreliable that bus as a commuting mode is really bad. So I guess just some feedback for you guys there on the kind of the bus travel, which you probably know to a certain extent already, but it's always good to get more insight, isn't it?
Yeah, and to a certain extent, you know, we have to play the hand that we're dealt. We don't have the power to introduce lots of new bus routes, and we as a society have sort of built this infrastructure around, you know, the use of the private vehicle, and unpicking that from a sort of, you know, economic, social, physical infrastructure juggernaut that it is a huge job. So what we need to do is use the resources we've got to enable people to make a change where we can. You know, unfortunately, we can't affect everyone everywhere all at once, as the movie says.
Yeah.
But yeah, we play the hand we're dealt, and we try to enable what we can.
Yeah, I think that's a really reasonable and realistic answer. It's going to be like an incremental process, really, isn't it, rather than a
just so.
wholesale change in how we travel to and from work. Quick question here again from Andrew. When will the first plan be in place?
It's in draft form at the moment. We've got to go out to some other departments, and some of the sort of sustainability leads within different directorates, to get some input from them, so we know that it's answering the needs of different parts of the council, and then we will launch it, I think, within the next couple of months, I hope.
Great stuff. Yeah, I'm sure we'll communicate that as well when that is ready to go. Another question here from Scott. Are there any dates for bikeability for staff? Any plans to include staff's family and maybe friends to be included in any future incentives? That's a good question from Scott.
Yes, we will be advertising some dates for staff bikeability in the near future. As I said, now the weather's getting better, it's a bit more appealing to get outdoors and do that. So we will be looking at some dates where we've got instructors available, and making those known on the intranet in the near future. As far as including family, yeah, why not? Nothing's off the table, so yeah, we can.
That's good to hear. Rebecca just clarified what she means by a touchdown centre. It makes total sense now. So she said, for example, Sans Sushi used to be a touchdown centre where staff could go rather than travelling to the main offices. Because for Rebecca, she could cycle or walk to this as she lives in Shirley. And I know there is the Dickens Heath Work Hub that opened earlier in the year. That's not specifically for council staff. You do have to still pay for that, but it's a similar sort of idea, kind of these flexi working spaces. So yeah, is there any kind of, have you got anything to add on that?
I think the Smarter Ways of Working team are the people to answer that question. Yeah, I don't know so much about the work they've developed on that, but yeah, I understand that's the sort of thing they're looking at. Yeah,
I think that's probably fair, isn't it? Hopefully we can get an update from them at some point and make sure all staff are that all staff kind of been kept in the loop. Ulrich's just had another comment, really adding to the conversation so far. Let me just get the last one. He's just said, I also find that two-way cycle tracks are rather impractical and inconvenient. I know there is different styles of cycle lanes that you can have, the two-way ones, and then you can have the kind of segregated cycle lanes as well. So it was just really a comment on that. Unless you've got anything to add, Simon, I'll just continue.
Have your say in the consultations when they come out for new cycle routes.
Yeah, that's a very good shout, definitely. So Laura has asked, are there any options to borrow a laptop for the day? So having to bring the laptop into the office means I'm less likely to cycle in or run in. And for colleagues who live closer, they don't really want to walk carrying the laptop to work in the office, for example, weight or worried about it being stolen. I think that's an interesting idea. Any thoughts, Simon? And perhaps that's again something for Smarter Ways of Working. But
yeah, very possibly. Yeah, that's an IT and as well sort of question, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting there, the kind of connection between those two areas of sustainable travel and Smarter Ways of Working. So perhaps the feedback we've got today, we can kind of like feed that back to those teams. and then see what they say on those questions. Just making sure everything's okay on the tech side of things. Can you still hear me, Simon?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, so Karen has asked, I recognise the impact that cars have and have bought at a higher cost a more energy efficient car, as I would not be able to cycle to work due to health mobility issues. I feel this needs to be considered in any plans, as not everyone is able to cycle or holds a blue badge, nor forced to gain a blue badge as proof of disability. Again, it's just a comment from Karen. If you had anything else you wanted to.
No, of course we'll be
Yeah.
we'll be gathering all those comments when the session's finished, so we can review those and see what we can do with it.
Right. Just looking really. Yeah, Rebecca's just mentioned about hot desking and the kind of the touchdown spaces. I think that's probably the way working's going to go in the future, and generally companies are cutting down on the kind of permanent fixed desk, and it's all about hot desking and pop-up centres and stuff like that. So it'll be one to like kind of look out for really over the next few years. Thank you so much everybody for all those questions. It's been a really good session. It's been a great Q&A, as well as the presentations. I can't see anything extra coming in, but that doesn't mean to say if you don't have any questions, you can't email the Sustainable Travel team at the email address was provided at the end of the presentation, and I'm sure it can be popped in the chat now, or it can be circulated afterwards. So just to conclude, really, just to wrap things up, I'll just say a big thank you to Annabelle and Simon today for their presentations, and particularly as well for the Q&A. I know it's there's so many questions coming in, and it's you kind of really got to think on your feet. So I appreciate all of the team and the answers they've been able to give. And thank you very much as well, of course, to Claire for doing all the backstage productions. Did a fabulous job. The next Lunch and Learn will be in April, and it will focus on corporate parenting. So corporate parenting, just to give a very brief synopsis, it affects everyone really who's employed by Solihull Council, having a collective responsibility to act for children and care in the same way that a good parent would act for their own child. So look out for the registration link for that in future staff communications. I'll also be sharing the recorded link from today's session in the next staff magazine, Our Solihull, and on the intranet. So if anyone couldn't make it today and you know that they wanted to, or you think they'll find it interesting if they cycle to work or they're thinking about it, please do pass the link on. So I think that's everything. Really good session today, and it was really good engagement in particular. So yeah, I'll say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.